The mansion was filled with laughter from the billionaire's guests, but silence fell when he shouted, "Get out of my house, you worthless maid." He didn't know that the woman standing there, trembling with tears in her eyes, was not just a maid, she was the mother he had abandoned and forgotten. The grand chandelier sparkled like 1,000 diamonds as Adrian Cole's mansion came alive with music, laughter, and clinking glasses. It was one of those nights when the rich gathered to celebrate their own brilliance, and Adrian, the host, was the brightest star in the room. His name was whispered with admiration across the city, the self-made billionaire, the man who turned ashes into gold. Guests in tailored suits and glittering gowns moved through the marble hall, praising his achievements, desperate for his attention. Adrian stood tall, glass in hand, flashing the charming smile that had graced business magazines countless times. But behind that smile lay a heart that had forgotten the warmth of family. His wealth filled every corner of the mansion, yet his soul carried an emptiness no amount of money could cure. As waiters hurried to keep champagne glasses full and trays of golden delicacies circulating, Adrian's eyes scanned the crowd with pride. Tonight was about him, his empire, his power, his success. He thought nothing could disturb the perfect image he had built. Yet, as the doors at the back opened and a humble maid stepped in quietly, carrying a tray of wine glasses, fate prepared to shatter his illusion. Her presence went unnoticed by the guests, but her eyes lingered on Adrian longer than they should have, holding memories buried in silence. She moved carefully between the wealthy, her uniform plain against their glittering jewels, but her heart beat faster with every step closer to him. Adrian didn't recognize her face in the shadows of the chandeliers, but destiny had already set its trap. The night, which began with glamour and pride, was about to reveal a truth powerful enough to break the billionaire's world in two. The music softened as the maid, Evelyn, stepped into the glittering hall, balancing a polished tray of crystal glasses filled with deep red wine. Her steps were careful, almost too careful, as though she feared the very floor beneath her might betray her. The guests hardly noticed her; to them, she was invisible, just another servant in black and white uniform. But inside Evelyn's heart, every detail of this mansion stirred old memories she had long tried to bury. The golden railings, the tall portraits on the walls, even the marble staircase, all of it whispered of a past she had once known intimately. She dared to lift her eyes for a moment, and there he was, Adrian Cole, the man everyone admired, standing with pride at the center of it all. For the world, he was a symbol of power, success, and wealth, but for Evelyn, he was something more, something hidden that no one else could see. Her breath caught in her throat, and she nearly stumbled before regaining her balance. Adrian's laughter carried across the hall, strong and confident, so different from the soft cries of the baby she once held in her arms. She clutched the tray tighter, fighting the storm inside her chest. Every fiber of her being wanted to call his name, to tell him the truth that had been stolen from them, but fear and shame kept her silent. She knew this was not the right time. So she lowered her head, moving quietly among the powerful guests, careful not to draw attention. Yet, with every passing second, the distance between them felt like an ocean she could no longer swim across. Evelyn's heart ached with longing, and though Adrian did not see her as anything more than a servant, fate had already begun to write their reunion in fire. The party sparkled with joy until a single accident silenced the hall. As Evelyn moved carefully between the glittering crowd, her hand trembled slightly, and one glass tilted too far on the tray. A few drops of red wine splashed onto the polished shoes of a wealthy guest, who gasped in irritation. The room froze for a heartbeat, and all eyes turned toward the trembling maid. Evelyn quickly bent down, apologizing softly, but before she could explain, Adrian's voice thundered across the hall. "What kind of useless maid can't even carry a tray?" His tone was sharp, his words cutting through the music like broken glass. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, whispering behind their hands, but no one dared intervene. Evelyn's face turned pale as she tried to steady herself, the weight of humiliation pressing down heavier than the tray in her hands. Adrian stepped closer, his expression hard with pride, and without a second thought he declared, "You're fired. Get out of my house right now." The sharp command echoed against the golden walls, leaving Evelyn frozen in place. For a moment, Her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak, but the truth locked in her heart kept her silent. Tears welled in her eyes, yet she lowered her head, whispering only, "I'm sorry." The music stopped, the laughter died, and the air grew heavy with discomfort. To Adrian, it was just another servant he could replace, but to Evelyn, it was a wound deeper than anyone in that room could imagine. With shaking hands, she set the tray down and walked toward the door, each step heavier than the last. The glittering guests turned their eyes away, but destiny had already begun to stir, for Adrian had just cast out the one woman whose love had once been his entire world. Evelyn's footsteps echoed softly against the marble floor as she left the glittering hall, her body trembling from the weight of Adrian's harsh words. Though the room behind her brimmed with gold, laughter, and pride, she felt only the cold sting of rejection, a pain far sharper than any wound. She pressed a hand to her chest, as though she could steady the storm raging inside her, but nothing could stop the flood of memories, memories of the baby she had once cradled, of the tiny fingers that had once clutched her own, of lullabies sung through sleepless nights. Now, that same child, grown into a powerful man, had looked at her with disdain and cast her out as if she were nothing. Evelyn's lips quivered, but she swallowed her words, too broken to defend herself. "I'm sorry," she whispered once more, though no one was there to hear it. The tears she had fought so hard to contain finally spilled, tracing lines down her tired face as she reached the heavy front doors. Every step away from him felt like a piece of her soul tearing apart. Yet beneath her sorrow burned a quiet strength. She had endured years of separation, of lies told by others, and of watching from the shadows while her son rose to greatness. To be humiliated by him now was unbearable, but she would not allow despair to destroy her completely. She knew the truth was too powerful to stay hidden forever. Still, the wound of that night cut deep, and as Evelyn stepped out into the cool night air, the sound of music fading behind her, she carried with her a pain only a mother could know, the pain of being rejected by her own child. Adrian returned to the center of the hall after Evelyn's dismissal, brushing off the tension as if it were nothing more than a speck of dust on his tailored suit. The guests forced polite smiles, raising their glasses again, eager to please their host, but in the back of Adrian's mind, a strange unease lingered. He drowned it with more wine, convincing himself that the maid's tears meant nothing. To him, she was just another worker who couldn't meet his high standards. Yet deep inside, he carried a hollow ache that even he could not explain. His past had always been a blur, wrapped in shadows he never dared to question. His father, cold and commanding, had raised him to be strong, ruthless, and unyielding. From the time Adrian could remember, he was told that his mother had died when he was just a baby. He grew up believing those words, carrying the weight of abandonment, a wound that shaped his arrogance and pride. Love, in his mind, was weakness, and weakness had no place in his empire. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, he felt an emptiness no amount of wealth could fill, a longing for something nameless. He dismissed it quickly, convincing himself that success was all he needed. The truth, however, had been carefully buried by his father's lies. That night, as Adrian basked in the admiration of his guests, he had no idea that the woman he had just humiliated was the very person he thought had been long gone. His forgotten past was standing right in front of him, alive and breathing, waiting for the day destiny would finally force him to see the truth. The party carried on with forced laughter, though an uneasy silence had brushed the edges of the night. Adrian, proud and unbothered on the surface, mingled among his powerful guests, shaking hands and receiving praise as if nothing had happened. Yet in the corner of the hall, an old man watched him closely, his sharp eyes following every move. Mr. Lawson, a longtime family friend, had known Adrian since childhood. Unlike the others, he had not clapped at the insult nor turned away from the maid's pain. Instead, he felt a heaviness in his chest that refused to be ignored. When the music paused and the crowd shifted toward the dining area, Lawson approached Adrian, leaning close so no one else could hear. His voice was low, steady, and filled with meaning. "Do you even know who that woman is?" he asked, his words striking like thunder in the calm of the evening. Adrian frowned, his smile faltering for the first time that night. She was just a maid who couldn't do her job, he replied with irritation, brushing off the thought. But Lawson did not move away. His eyes, filled with both pity and warning, lingered on Adrian. Some truths, he whispered, cannot stay buried forever. Before Adrian could demand an explanation, Lawson stepped back into the crowd, leaving the billionaire unsettled and strangely uneasy. Adrian laughed it off for the guests around him, but his heart raced, the old man's words echoing in his mind like a shadow he couldn't escape. Somewhere deep inside, a long-forgotten fear began to stir, and though Adrian didn't yet understand it, the foundation of his world had already begun to crack. Later that night, long after the last guest had left and the Golden Hall had fallen silent, Adrian retreated to his private study, seeking comfort in the quiet hum of his fireplace. He loosened his tie, poured himself another drink, and let out a heavy sigh, ready to forget the strange words Lawson had spoken. But as he settled into the leather chair, he noticed an envelope resting on his polished desk, its edges worn, his name scrawled across the front in shaky handwriting. Curiosity pushed aside his irritation, and he tore it open. Inside lay a single faded photograph. Adrian froze. The picture showed a young woman holding a baby, her smile tender and full of love. The baby, wrapped in a soft blanket, had familiar features, the round cheeks, the wide eyes, the tiny dimple in the chin. Adrian's hand trembled as he realized the infant was him. His eyes shifted back to the woman in the photo, and a strange recognition pulled at his chest. Though the picture was old and blurred, he saw the resemblance to the maid he had just cast out. His heart thudded painfully in his chest, and he set the glass down before it slipped from his hand. A note, folded neatly behind the photograph, carried only a few words: "The truth has been hidden too long. Ask yourself who she is." Adrian's mind raced, denial crashing against curiosity, anger clashing with fear. He wanted to dismiss it, to believe it was some cruel trick, yet the resemblance was undeniable. That gentle smile, that look of love, it haunted him. For the first time in years, the billionaire who feared nothing felt his heart weaken, as if the walls he had built around himself were beginning to crumble. Adrian could not sleep that night. The photograph haunted him, the image of the smiling young woman with the baby etched into his mind. Restless, he summoned Mr. Lawson to his study, demanding answers. When the old man arrived, his face carried the weight of secrets long buried. "Tell me what this means," Adrian snapped, holding up the photograph with shaking hands. Lawson looked at him sadly, his eyes filled with both pity and regret. "It means the woman you humiliated tonight is not a stranger," he said softly. "She is your mother." Adrian's breath caught, his voice cracking with disbelief. "That's impossible. My mother died when I was a baby." "My father told me," Lawson cut him off, his tone firm but sorrowful. "Your father lied. He was a proud man, harsh and unyielding. He thought Evelyn was too poor, too unworthy to raise his son. So he tore you from her arms and told you she was gone. She begged to stay in your life, but he banished her. I was there, Adrian. I saw her tears." The words hit Adrian like a hammer to the chest, leaving him gasping for air. His mind raced, memories flickering, empty birthdays, cold embraces, a life filled with wealth but no warmth. "All these years," he whispered, his voice breaking. Lawson placed a hand on his shoulder. "She never stopped loving you. She has lived in silence, carrying the pain of losing her child while watching you rise to greatness. And tonight, without knowing, you wounded her deeper than anyone ever could." Adrian sank into his chair, the strength drained from his body. For the first time in his life, the empire he had built seemed meaningless, because the foundation of his world had been built on a lie. The truth gnawed at Adrian like a fire burning inside his chest, each word Lawson had spoken echoing louder with every breath. He could no longer sit still, no longer hide behind the walls of pride and arrogance. Evelyn, his mother, the woman he had insulted and thrown out, was gone into the night, carrying wounds deeper than he had ever imagined. Guilt weighed so heavily on him that his knees threatened to give way, but determination drove him forward. Throwing on his coat, he rushed out of the mansion into the storm that raged outside. The rain poured down in sheets, soaking him within seconds, but he did not care. His luxury car roared to life, headlights piercing through the darkness as he sped into the city streets. His eyes scanned every corner, every bus stop, every shadowed figure along the road, his heart pounding like a war drum. "Please, let me find her," he whispered desperately, gripping the steering wheel as though it could anchor him to hope. Images of Evelyn's tear-streaked face haunted him, her trembling apology echoing in his ears. The thought that she might leave forever, that he might never have the chance to beg for forgiveness, made his chest tighten with panic. For the first time in his life, money, power, and reputation meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was finding her before regret consumed him completely. The city lights blurred through the rain as he pressed harder on the accelerator, his soul aching with fear. Somewhere out there, in the cold and merciless night, was the woman who had given him life, and Adrian knew he would not stop until he brought her home, not as a servant, but as his mother. Adrian's car screeched to a halt as his headlights caught the faint silhouette of a woman sitting alone at a bus stop, her shoulders slumped beneath the heavy rain. His heart skipped a beat, recognizing the worn uniform clinging to her frail frame. It was Evelyn. She sat silently, her hands clasped together, staring at the ground as if the weight of the world pressed upon her. For a moment, Adrian could not move, with fear and shame rooted him in place. How could he face her after what he had done? Gathering what little courage he had left, he stepped out of the car, the rain instantly drenching him, but he barely felt it. His footsteps echoed on the wet pavement as he approached her slowly, almost afraid she might vanish if he moved too quickly. Evelyn lifted her head, her tear-filled eyes meeting his. Shock flickered across her face, followed by hesitation. The proud billionaire, admired by millions, now stood before her trembling like a child. His lips quivered as he whispered the one word he thought he would never say, "Mom." The silence between them was broken only by the steady drumming of the rain. Evelyn's breath caught, her heart torn between pain and longing. Adrian fell to his knees before her, the cold water soaking his suit, his voice breaking as he pleaded, "Please, forgive me. I didn't know. I didn't know you were my mother." His tears mingled with the rain as they fell freely. For the first time in his life, Adrian's mask of power shattered, leaving only a son desperate for the love he had lost. Evelyn's trembling hand reached out, brushing against his cheek, and in that single touch, years of separation, grief, and silence began to dissolve into the night. The moment Evelyn's hand touched Adrian's face, the dam inside her heart broke, and years of suppressed pain came rushing out in tears that mingled with the rain. She cupped his cheeks gently, her hands trembling as if afraid he might slip away again. "My son," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of emotions too long buried. Adrian's eyes widened at the sound, the words striking his soul with a power no amount of wealth or success had ever given him. He clutched her hands desperately, pressing them against his face as if trying to anchor himself to the truth. "I never stopped loving you," Evelyn continued, her voice soft yet steady, her tears flowing freely. "Not a single day passed that I didn't think of you, pray for you, dream of holding you again." Adrian broke down, sobbing like a child, the cold rain washing away the pride and arrogance that had once shielded his heart. "I thought you were gone," he choked, his shoulders shaking. "All my life I believed you had abandoned me, and tonight I treated you like nothing." Evelyn shook her head, stroking his wet hair with the tenderness only a mother could give. "You were never nothing to me," she said, her voice breaking, "you were my everything." She pulled him into her arms, and Adrian collapsed against her, clinging tightly as if afraid she might disappear. In that embrace, the mansion, the wealth, the entire world outside vanished, leaving only a mother and her son, broken but finally whole again. Their tears, their pain, and their love blended together, washing away the years of lies. For the first time in decades, Evelyn's heart felt at peace, and Adrian, once a billionaire without warmth, felt truly loved. The next morning, the mansion that had once been a monument to Adrian's pride and power opened its doors to a different kind of gathering. The same halls that had echoed with arrogance now hummed with anticipation. Adrian had called together his closest associates, loyal staff, and even some of the guests who had witnessed the humiliating scene the night before. Whispers filled the air as people wondered what could be so urgent, but when Adrian entered, he was not the same man they knew. His suit was still sharp, but his expression was softer, humbled, his eyes carrying the weight of truth. Walking beside him was Evelyn, no longer in the plain maid's uniform but dressed with quiet dignity, her posture steady despite the eyes upon her. Adrian stood before them all and raised his voice. Last night, I made a mistake that revealed more about me than I ever wanted to face. I insulted someone I should have cherished, someone I thought I had lost forever. He paused, his hand gently resting on Evelyn's shoulder. This woman is not my maid. She is my mother. Gasps swept through the room, followed by silence so deep it seemed the walls themselves were listening. Evelyn's eyes welled with tears, but this time they were tears of pride, not shame. Adrian's voice broke slightly as he continued, "For years, I believed I was abandoned, but the truth is she never stopped loving me. I was blind, and I hurt her. But today, I want the world to know that my greatest treasure has never been my wealth, it is her." The guests lowered their eyes in respect, some moved to tears, as Adrian embraced Evelyn before them all. The mansion no longer felt cold, it was finally a home.